Hey guys, so today's video is an update on the David, Jeff, H3, Jason Nash, Bryce Hall saga that is going on. This is going to be part 3. Yeah, video number 3 recently, and I'm going to have video number 4 hopefully for you guys tomorrow. I'm trying to split it up just so it's not too much in one video. I'm trying to split it up in a way that is easy to consume the content. So today we're going to cover David Dobrik's podcast episode, and then tomorrow we're going to cover Jeff Wittek's podcast episode in response to David Dobrik's podcast episode, just so you guys get a little bit of a break in between just to think and consume. Talking about podcasts, I'm also starting my own podcast. The episode should be out in the Monday coming up, evening time UK time. Somewhere else you'll have to Google. I don't know all the time zones. But that'll all be in the description along with anything else you might need to find. So let's just get into it. So David starts off his podcast episode with Jason Nash and Natalie, basically just saying that he just wants to make people happy and that he never wants to talk about more serious topics and address serious stuff, because he just wants his videos to be an escape for people, so that it's not all about mental health and being upset and mental breakdowns and the whole thing. So he just kind of wants it to be happy and cheerful, and his whole goal on YouTube was always just to be an escape for people. And that's kind of the explanation / excuse that he uses for not addressing a lot of the stuff that people have thrown his way. For example, Jeff Wittek's accident, the Insider article about the anonymous girl, just a bunch of things that he should have addressed quicker, sooner, more effectively, more efficiently, that he didn't address the way people wanted him to address. Of course, he has since addressed Jeff Wittek, and he has since addressed the Insider article, but it was not in the way that people wanted him to, if that makes sense, because I guess he just wants his channel to be an escape for people. That's his thing. Now, this whole thing has now blown up because of two things. Bryce Hall's roast. There was the roast of Bryce Hall where he invited a bunch of friends to roast him. That was an issue. And two, Casey Neistat documentary that is coming out, I believe, this weekend. And David Dobrik is interviewed for it and talks about the Jeff Wittek accident, which then turns into drama with Jeff Wittek. So I'm going to cover both of those the way David has covered them. So for Casey's documentary, in that David said that the excavator swinging thing around was actually Jeff's idea. And he says that as much he was the one operating the crane and he was the one doing the swinging. It was initially Jeff's idea to make it more exciting. They were all on kind of wakeboards, I believe, being swung around the water, and Jeff said that it was too boring and that they weren't children, that they were supposed to do more exciting things, and he suggested that he gets swung around. That's David's version of the story. He says that it's still something that stays with him every day. He thinks about it every day because he is the one that physically did the damage, but he claims Jeff's idea was to make it more exciting, and that is where that whole idea stemmed from, is from apparently Jeff Wittek. I'm not standing on either side in this. I feel at this point I'm gonna get sued if I actually express opinions. It's such he said, she said, actually it's he said here, that I physically cannot express an opinion right now. I'm just going to give you guys a summary. Someone's going to keep on saying allegedly and he said in his opinion. I'm just going to give you guys a summary of David's podcast, a summary of Jeff's, and then you let me know in the comments what you think, and then I'll gather a bit of a general consensus along this storyline. Jeff got angry at David for saying that, so Casey Neistat actually reached out to Jeff and said, hey, I'm filming this documentary. So sorry guys, I just smacked my mic. Casey Neistat actually reaches out to Jeff and says, hey, I just did an interview with David and he told me this really interesting bit of information about how allegedly this accident was your idea. I'm just letting you know, just before this releases, just so you're aware. And Jeff gets really angry. Jeff gets angry because of a promise that David allegedly made to him. Now David acknowledges the promise and says that after the accident, when he went to the hospital, Jeff had asked him to not tell anyone how this accident happened and how, it came to be and whose idea it was. And apparently that's what he said in the hospital. So David tried to keep up his side of the promise, but allegedly because of how Jeff was going about describing the situation, it started being very difficult for David to keep up his side of the promise because he was being blamed for everything. And he was receiving a bunch of backlash for the accident. So he, at this point, decided to kind of break the promise and start saying the truth, or whatever David claims the truth to be. Now, Jeff sent, actually during the accident, so David actually mentions this and I'm very confused about why he mentioned it, but let me just break it down. So apparently, while they were on the excavator, before Jeff got on, he saw David swinging people around, and actually he went on Instagram and he saw 50 Cent doing the same thing, but just getting swung around the way Jeff was supposed to get swung around. And he sends that as a DM to David. Now, that, David makes it sound like that is almost a reason why they did it. Oh, Jeff sent it to me as an idea, so we decided to do it. But then later on says that he hadn't read the DM until after the accident. So I'm not really sure why this was mentioned if it wasn't actually a deciding factor in why they did the stunt. Like, if Jeff had sent this to you as like a little cool, like, oh my god, we're doing this at the same time and I'm seeing 50 Cent do it, he probably sent it as like a cool, like, oh my god, guys, like, we're not original. We're doing it and 50 Cent is literally just doing it on my timeline. He sent it and you didn't see it until after the accident, then it wasn't a factor in why this happened. So I'm just really not sure why that was mentioned. I'm very confused about that. But anyway, so David broke his promise because of the backlash that he received for the video. Well, no one actually saw the video until recently, but people kind of found out about the accident, gave him backlash, and he decided to break his promise to Jeff and talk about how this stunt came to be. He actually doesn't understand why Jeff is so defensive. So he says that Jeff is very defensive about David talking about whose idea it was, and David is very confused as to why Jeff is so defensive, because David claims that either way, even if it was Jeff's idea, David was the one that physically did it. So all the blame is being put on David anyway, regardless of whose idea it was. Like, David's the one that's being blamed anyway. So he doesn't understand why Jeff is being so defensive. But I'm guessing Jeff's being so defensive because if it actually wasn't his idea to go that fast, it makes him look silly, stupid, dumb, an idiot, like whatever people said about him before they found out the whole story. I think, you know, when this first happened, everyone was like making fun of Jeff and being like, oh my god, he's such an idiot, why would he do that? And I guess Jeff just didn't want to be the idiot of the group, and he wanted it to be known that this wasn't his choice, that like he didn't choose to have a messed up eye and he didn't choose to go through 9 surgeries. Like, this was something that was just like kind of pressured on him. So I guess that's why Jeff is so defensive about making sure everyone knows whose idea it was and that everyone knows that it wasn't his idea to get injured, essentially. But I don't know. I'm not in Jeff's head and I'm not in David's head, but I'm assuming that's why he's so defensive about it. David then also says how he wishes that Jeff was more truthful about the way he talks about things. So for example, in recent videos, Jeff talks about the fact that David kind of tried to like brush this under the rug and like not really talk about this. But David actually says that this was all Jeff's idea. Like, Jeff told David to not talk about this until Jeff was ready. And then David even took part in the documentary that Jeff filmed about the eye surgery. So he says he was just following along with Jeff's instructions and like Jeff's wishes. So when Jeff said, I'm not ready to talk about it, David stayed quiet. And when Jeff did the documentary, he willingly participated in the documentary to describe the situation. So he basically, David claims that he just was following instructions and wishes, but now Jeff is making it seem like David didn't talk about it because he wanted to like sweep it under the rug. So he wishes that Jeff was more truthful when he talks about the situation. Then he says that he felt pushed into the corner during the documentary. So David claims that one of the people that was working on the documentary with Jeff had gone to David after a few interviews and said, can you just cry for one of the videos because it makes you look really borderline sociopathic, like you just lack in empathy and like you don't care that you just permanently injured your friend. And David thought that was like a really weird thing to say to him, and he felt pushed into the corner. He felt like if he didn't cry, he was going to be made out to be the villain of the documentary, and he just felt overall just a bit meh about the whole thing. Then he talks about how, so Jeff complained about the first video back where after the accident, David had invited all of his friends around to his house and spent $1 million on a Hawaii, why can't I get the sentence out, on a Hawaii holiday for everyone. And he gets them all into the car and tells them about the surprise. And Jeff actually was really pissed off because this was a way to make it up to Jeff, but actually the Hawaii holiday was booked on the same day as one of Jeff's eye surgeries. David claims that he didn't know about this surgery and it was actually booked last minute. It was like a last minute emergency surgery, but if he knew, he wouldn't have booked Hawaii for that time, but he did. And then it came out that the surgery was happening and Jeff couldn't attend holiday that was supposed to be an apology to Jeff. So that's kind of what he says happened. Like, it wasn't malicious and it wasn't like he didn't want Jeff there, because if he didn't want Jeff there, he wouldn't have invited him, but he just didn't know that the surgery was happening at the same time, essentially. Then we have the credit score thing. So Jeff claimed in the Dear David video that he is paying for a lot of the surgeries and a lot of the stuff, and it's all coming out of his account, but he was supposed to be reimbursed for that by David, and because he hadn't, his credit score has gone down because he didn't pay off the loans, because there was no money there. Like, David hadn't sent the money, so now he's got like a credit score blip. And now David claims that he has covered most, if not all, the surgeries, that he has actually signed Jeff into like a health insurance thing, so like all the surgeries are covered anyway and it's not going out of his pocket, but also that he has always been willing to pay for the surgeries, and he told Jeff that, but Jeff never loops them into any of the like emails or letters or any of the correspondence between him and the hospital, so they're actually never aware of when the surgeries are happening. And then when, you know, if they like, they want to pay but they're just not looped into when it's happening, and that the last surgery he found out about was through Instagram and not through like any emails or any bank statements or anything like that. So he claims that he wanted to pay, but a lot of the times Jeff just isn't letting him know what needs to be paid. Then he says that about the roast of Bryce Hall, he had no say in Jeff's jokes being cut out. That was purely SeatGeek, and that actually Jeff didn't make any David Dobrik jokes. He made one, and that one joke would have stayed in if Jeff hadn't chosen to be cut out. So he says that he hadn't like gone over the video, like the final edit, like he didn't have any say in that, and actually he was there in the audience and he didn't mind the jokes when he was in the audience. So he says that that was a way to show David silencing Jeff when that apparently wasn't the case. So far that is David's whole podcast episode. He then, goes on about other things, but that is mainly the Jeff stuff that he had covered in the vlog. The comments seem to be really positive, and Jason had actually invited Jeff to be on the podcast, and Jeff said no. But Jason in the podcast says that once Jeff hears this episode, he'll be very pleased and like very happy. Spoiler alert, he wasn't very happy. So I'm shocked that Jason would be so convinced that Jeff would be happy when that wasn't the case. I'm wondering if like maybe everyone thinks this is a good response but Jeff. I don't know, because the comments seem to be on David's side. And Jason seems to think that David's response was really good. But is that just because he's David's yes man? I'm not really sure. You guys let me know if you think it's a good response. If you want to listen to the podcast yourself and let me know, that's fine. But here's the summary. I gave you guys the best summary of my abilities. So let me know what you guys think about David's response and kind of in the most like objective manner, what you think about the way he's addressed this whole thing. And I'll see you in tomorrow's video for Jeff's response. Subscribe with that bell, like, comment for engagement. I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.